yeah, we don't have a planned lecture today, so I think it's about 11 o'clock. We can get started.
So what we want to do is we want to run what we call a situational workshop. The main difference between a situational workshop and a Q&A. A Q&A is just any question, right? Question can be on, I read something, I have a theory, I have a potential problem.
What do you think about
right?
that?
Situational workshops is really going inwardly to yourself. Situations that you are tackling and you're dealing with, but you've had at least one attempt, meaning you're in the arena with the situation. And the idea of sharing a situation like that you've tackled is to try to get a different lens, a different perspective of how someone else might attack it. And so what we want to do is use the audience here to get a bunch of situations that you're struggling with. And then we're going to have you put it into the chat. So, and then we're going to call on you so that you can elaborate, because you might ask more questions on it, figure out ways to just get you to give us more info, more detail. And then it's a way to help live coach things people are struggling with. I think a general theme that came up from the last LIP class last week, which was all tied to people are generally very down. There's a very big transition window. I think this month of September is a massive transition window, whether it's with, if you have children going to school and figuring out, will they be open, closed, what will happen? Whether it's with work, are they trying to make you come back or not? Is the virus going to explode again? I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, transitions. We talked about how looking back 6 months is usually the mirror image of how we think about our future outlook, looking out 4 to 6 months, the end of the year. And so there's a lot of difficulty that people have. We saw this in people we coach outside of this group. We saw this in individuals in our own company. So we want to help navigate some of that and get as real as possible. So having said this, can you take a few minutes, maybe a minute or two, go into the chat and just punch in something, give us something tough that you're tackling. And it can be anything. It could be with home life, it could be with a boss, a subordinate, a colleague. It could be tied to, just mental chatter that you have going on. It could be depression related. It could be maybe, like
anything
hope
you're
that you're struggling
with.
It doesn't matter what it is, but like something real that we can actually go into more depth on. So
we'll give you a few minutes of silence. I feel you might need a few minutes to think about it, but I think if you can think of the things that you've been trying and struggling and trying different things, as opposed to, asking open-ended questions of what do you think about this, or how should I solve this? Like if you could try to give us a little bit more. So we'll go through and look at the themes that are coming up. And then as we see some of the themes coming up, we'll pick out a few individuals. We'll just go and we'll see how many we can get through. Depends on how meaty the situations are, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. So yeah, we'll give you some silence. I'll stop talking and just start to think about those situations. Okay, so Megan's asking the question again. So the question is, think about things you're struggling with, situations that you're in right now, whether it's at home, at work, with a colleague, with a friend, a boss, a child, whatever the situation might be that you're grappling with the most. If you share that with us, we're going to try and get through as many situations as we can. And so everybody's putting into the chat things that they're struggling with. We're going to call on a few people and we're going to try to help go into more depth. So think about things that you've actually tried tackling, less theory questions, not so Q&A, right? More in practice what you're struggling with.
So I'm looking at it, maybe Jen Findlay from ADP. Would love for you to, yes, unmute yourself. Help us as a community, as a group, understand your question, your situation.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am on my team. I am on a sub team. So before COVID, we worked together in the office, so we were together all the time. So even though I was on a sub team, I was frustrated with having to go, I was frustrated with going to weekly meetings that didn't have anything to do with me. But we were on a sub team, we worked together, we were seated right there together. Now, I'm on this sub team. I'm in weekly meetings that don't have anything to do with my workload. I'm not gaining anything knowledge-wise from the meetings, and it's very frustrating, and I'm feeling very disconnected from the group as a whole.
And can you share, Jen, how is the meeting run? Like, is it like 5 people, 10 people? Is it
like
one person's giving an update?
It's like 5 or 6 people. It's normally like, okay, this is what the workload was for this week. This is what's been accomplished.
And how often do you guys meet a week?
It's once a week.
And how long is that meeting?
It normally lasts about 15 to 20 minutes.
So I mean, 15 to 20 minutes once a week is really an insignificant amount of time, right? I mean, for the most part.
Yeah. You
can dial in for 20 minutes and act like you're paying attention and not even really, it's really short, right? But I think.
Yeah, that's what I've done, but I don't like doing that. Like,
so the direction I'm going is that I feel there's something bigger underlying, because I think, like, we've met people who are stuck in daily meetings, right, that run for an hour plus, and they feel like it has nothing to do with them. And that's a different situation than if you have a weekly 15 to 20 minute meeting, and what they're discussing, and it sounds very tactical, has little to do with your workload, and you feel disconnected from the team, you feel, and I see this as a slightly different situation. And I might throw out maybe my quick thought. So one of the interesting things that has come up a lot is the office, no different than like going to school, is a foundation. The physical space, the meeting together physically, is a foundation for creating rigor and discipline. And rigor and discipline for teams, for human beings, is almost a requirement to do good work, to do great work. Like, teams don't usually form effectively without a foundation of rigor and discipline. And we underestimate this, especially when we all go online. And I think many of you may have heard that what the pandemic has done, working from home has done, is people that you used to be close with, you became closer with, and everyone else are like almost strangers or non-contact points for you. It's happened to children, it's happened to adults. So when we think about the foundation of how the 21st century, the human being works, being creative, thinking, like innovating, kind of like, how do you play a role in helping reinvent where almost everything is getting reinvented? The bottom of that pyramid is, when PEMS, we call it the P, the physical. Physical usually is exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And the foundational thing to trigger is exercise. And so I'm just going to give you a suggestion that we found quite effective. Throw out a suggestion of having a 30-minute meeting, recurring, just 3 times. Schedule it 3 times. We think it's best on a Monday. The ideal times usually are either 9:30 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. So you can pick whichever side you want. A 30-minute recurring meeting scheduled for 3 times as a team. And the meeting is basically an exercise workout. And so there's a couple little nuances of how to implement this. One is if there's 5 or 6 people on the team, you rotate who's picking what we're going to do. The beauty with Zoom is anyone can pick any online workout and then share it on the screen. So you're going to rotate, have a rotating list, which moves the responsibility of hosting that meeting to a different person. And the little nuances of this now is open the meeting 10 minutes before 9:30, say if it's 9:30 you're picking, so people can come in early and chit chat, and you have a shared activity about to start, and then keep the room open for 30 minutes at least after the meeting ends. So just keep it open till 10:30, anyone can linger and chat. The act of having a shared activity together, which by the way will help you also be healthy in a small group that's rotating responsibility, could be the thing that starts to create team. Like, often what's happening is team is what's lacking. And human beings bond over shared activity, and a shared activity that helps you get healthy, which helps your brain activate, it's a good ritual to have at least once a week. I would encourage trying to build up to at least twice a week. So ideally one on Monday, one on Wednesday. And recurring meetings take the greatest weight on people's calendars, but creating that rigor and discipline might help you set the foundational pieces to like start to feel close with this group on something that's good for you all.
Right, because I think in general, you assume that leaders know how to run meetings. I don't know what this leader is trying to do, you know what I mean, what they're trying to accomplish in that meeting. And could it be asynchronous? Could it be done via email? It's possible, right? But I think they're probably trying to do something that is more, otherwise you just send it over email. Everybody send your update in or whatever it is, send it out via email. They're trying to accomplish something. So I think to Charlie's point around the bonding exercise, but also trying to understand better what they're trying to do. And you might even, if it's not the workout, which I think is, it's something that we were talking about, what we've been working together for over 20 years. We've done this and this rigor and discipline and working out together, exercising together. So anyways, I think that's a good one. I saw another one in here. I think Carla, I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
Carla, do you want to unmute yourself and share more detail on the situation? Carla from San Diego. I don't know if there's other Carlas in here, but.
So the one about the leader that doesn't let me do my job.
Oh, did you have more?
I just added another one. Same along
okay.
the same lines. Like it's just really hard to get connected when you're all external. But yeah, so yeah, there's a specific person in our organization and runs the team, but just does everything that the team produces. He reworks, he redoes, then he sends up and it gets changed back to the way that the team had done it before. And you try to talk to him about it and he just says that you're being disrespectful, you're questioning his authority. And so a lot of people have stopped working for all intents and purposes, right? They'll do a 20% effort and say, well, he's going to change it anyway and submit it. But you can totally tell the morale of the entire team is just deflating at a rapid pace. So what are some best ways, knowing that he is very sensitive, you cannot.
I know, Carla, it's hard because it's a larger group. Is there any way you could give us like more specifics on like an issue, like maybe the last instance of this?
Sure. So we put a brief together for him. The whole team has been working for about 9 months together as a team. He kind of came in about halfway through, so somewhat new, but we put a brief together for him. We knew what leadership was asking for. He took that brief and completely reworked it and then gave it back to me to brief. It was no longer, we had put it together the way we thought it was going to be well received. He's my boss. I have to brief it. And our leadership said, hey, I want it's good, but I want to change it all back to, in essence, the way we had it before, right? Mm-hmm. So we stepped aside and I said, hey, you really need to let this group kind of do their job. That's what they do, right? And he basically said, you don't have the authority to question, like, I am in charge here. And if I want to make changes, I make changes. And basically that conversation ended very shortly, like very quickly. Yeah. So, a different example is he's like, hey, so it seems like I'm having a lot of trouble connecting with people. And I said, yeah, a little bit. You're really difficult to work with. And he's like, can you give me an example why? And so very politely, I approached that and said, hey, here's one example. And then he quickly turned it around and said, well, here's everything that you are doing wrong and that you need to work on as well. So that ended, he's just not receptive to feedback or anything. So at this point, like the only option is to just stop, just do what he says and move on. But you got another 9 months.
The thoughts that go through my head is, it's interesting that you were together as a team 9 months. Yeah. He came in halfway. One of the most common things, even for a leader, we're all human beings, right? Including the leaders. The number one thing that occurs to leaders, we went through like massive workshops and studies on leadership, and the number one thing is feeling inferior. Mm-hmm. Leaders have such a large, complex of feeling inferior. And then when you're coming to a team, that especially now when you're working from home, that seem to be gelling and knowing each other. And if you came halfway, probably came in the middle of this pandemic, right? So you have no real connection, having spent time physically with them, maybe as much. Like there's a part where my first thought is this leader badly needs a win. If you want to win, you know, trust with this leader, find a way to get them a win. And you know, like, it's like, Carla, if you're in the group, and I'm assuming you're within the 9 months, you know the ins and outs. And there's sometimes just easy wins. You can, who cares about pride and authorship when it comes to teams, right? But what ends up happening is if the lead of the team is in their head, feeling inferior, overexerting themselves to try to show that I'm going to add value. And oftentimes when a leader changes everything, it's really sometimes to show that, well, I'm adding values. If I said, just do it as is, why do they even need me? Right? And if it turns out that I should have kept it the way they had, it makes it even worse because it's like, Jesus, I'm really not needed. And so, so there's one aspect, which is it's hard to understand what mental torment they might be going through, how much they could be beating themselves up. And so finding a way to give them a win in a non-condescending and a non, that's not easy to do. But I think the part that is hard sometimes for people to see is, say, Carl, from your side, to truly try to understand their approach, their assumptions, and find a way to help do something with the team, with this leader. So it's almost like this whole, this example of connecting with people having a really difficult time, right? Like, I always think if I had a machine where I could read someone's mind, like I'd want to ask like 100 more questions underneath that question, right? Like, do you really want to be friends with them? Like, why? Like, are they not telling you things that you feel they're not telling? I mean, like, I just want to, and then I start poking at examples of people, like who specifically, wouldn't you like to know who they really have in mind? Because usually when they say that, they don't really mean everyone. Everyone's got a ballpark eye for, I'd really love to be closer to that person. Maybe it's you, Carl, for all I know. And so they say in research, the number one thing that bonds people is actually an act of vulnerability, meaning you saying something that someone can use against you. And that's a scary thing to do. So Carla, if you want to be friends and close to this leader, you need to have an act of vulnerability. That means you're giving them something that they could use back and hurt you if they chose to. And that act of vulnerability would then potentially, if done well, trigger at some point that person doing the same back to you. And there you have team. There you have bonding. And, you know, like the act of vulnerability is kind of tough because when you really define it as something you could use against me to hurt me, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking like when you said let this group do their job, I think he's thinking, well, I'm in charge. What the heck am I supposed to do then, right? I mean, that's the insecure leader, and that's why you said he's an insecure leader. He's trying to figure out, or she, what his job is. And I think, you know, when you come into a new position, you feel like you have to exert yourself. You have to do something. You have to stand out. Like Charlie said, have a win. Especially, I think, in that first 3 months window, people are watching. You feel such pressure. And so it's like looking at it from his end, what's he trying to do? You know, where did he come from? What's he trying to do with why he reconfigured the brief? Like, to try to understand what he's trying to do. And he might end up saying, I actually am not sure. You know what I mean? But unlikely to say that because he's probably, you know, doesn't want to admit that, but he's probably unsure of what he's trying to do, but he wants to exert himself in some way because that's his job, because he's in charge.
He's more likely going to admit that to you. Like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do and what I'm trying to do, and I have no idea even who the teammates are and what assets I have. If he felt he had something on you that you shared that he felt, well, you opened up to me, so I might open up to you. And I think as a leader, he actually has more at risk, even though it might feel the reverse. Because especially right now in this situation, he's the outsider. And he's the one that probably feels like everyone's laughing at him, right? And you can feel sort of the negative and energy or the hostility, even from your own team. And it's the worst thing, right? The other thing I was going to add really quick was this. Generally speaking, you find leaders tend to be strong in one of two sides from the Stockdale paradox, the idea of faith versus reality. And this is an interesting element where people have generally an imbalance towards one side. The idea of you need to have a positive future outlook, like a belief that we can do something great. And that's all tied to faith. But it's usually delusion unless you're grounded in reality. And a lot of people, a lot of leaders struggle sometimes to understand the depth of the details in what's actually happening now. And reality tends to be ugly. And today it's really ugly. So you know how people don't want to look at the bag, right? And they just want to daydream, or like they like, you know, are so grounded in reality, it's just depressing. It's like a malaise. So I don't know which side this leader falls in, but my sense is whichever side you figure out they are on, they need somebody to help balance the other side. Like, so like this leader might have a lot of ideas of what they want to do. And you might have a lot of the details, knowing the team and the situation, to add in the reality. And that makes a great partnership.
So Carl's like, it's not what I want to hear. Tell me some way to. Let's see, Jay Nolfo from the chemical company, BASF. Do you want to unmute? I think this might be an interesting one about the coworker seems not to have sense of urgency. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. So got a coworker that we're in two different parts of the organization, but a lot of the work that we do, I do to support his portion of the organization. And I have troubles with him just really doing anything, it seems like, in a lot of situations where, hey, I need you to do this. He's like, okay, I'll get on it. And it doesn't happen. Go back to him. Hey, I need you to do this. Or hey, I need you to make a decision to do X or Y because that's going to affect what I do for you next. And that decision just doesn't come into play. And that he just doesn't make a decision. This isn't just with me. This is a pattern that he has with a lot of people. So I know it's not a personal aspect of things. And so I've gone to my manager. We've had discussions across the board. Nothing seems to be improving. So wanted to get your thoughts on how do I get this person to just sometimes just make a decision or just act when, like I said, in my mind, and I tend to be very like, hey, go after it, go get it, let's make a decision and get it done. And he's very passive in regards to that. So there's definitely a personality difference. But looking to hear your thoughts.
Can I ask you a little more detail, Jay? You mentioned in the beginning that the work you do is to support his work, right?
Yeah, his team.
So his team. So like,
yeah. So I'm responsible for standing up our digital marketing platforms that his team is going to end up being, that his team uses. So like websites and things like that.
So I read that as you're doing work that should be a help to what he needs to do, right? And I'm like, the first word I had over here is this idea of curiosity, right? And you know what's very difficult in these situations is it's very difficult to not catch how biased you could get to. 100% bias, right? 100% certainty that this guy or girl, whoever the person is a schmuck, right? Like negative intent, like a feeling of like they're incompetent, they're doing it on purpose, like versus this idea of like, if I try to put on a different hat, right? Say like for a second, you were like this person's mother, right? You know how moms are always like, no matter what, my kid is like always good. And so if you put on this other hat and you're curious of this positive intent of like what's happening. And the first thing I thought about is a lot of times when people do supporting work, they assume I did my part and I helped you and I don't understand where you're not more grateful, you're not this. And I'm like, have you ever audited what happens with your thing afterwards? A lot of times people do supporting work that never really adds much value to the other person, or it's not quite right. It needs several little adjustments and tweaks, but because you weren't curious enough to see how the follow through of that work is, the feeling is, I did that, now I need you to do this, and I'm frustrated because you're not. Meaning the baked in assumption is like a quid pro quo of like, I contributed and you're not. And it's like, whoa, like just because you checked that off doesn't mean it helped me. And so this idea of following an example through could be interesting because, and it takes a level of curiosity because oftentimes we found, especially when different departments work together, that the handoff is really important.
Yeah.
And it's in the nuances of the detail that makes this massive difference. And people think, well, like I made this part and you just figure out how to use it, as opposed to if I made it easier for you to go into whatever you need, or if you understood what happens with it, you would build it differently. We do this always in building websites and mobile apps, like what we call usability studies. You want to observe someone using what you did. And it's never what the builder thought happens.
Yeah, in many ways, he's the customer, right? For you, Jay, in many ways, he's the customer, right? And I know he works in your company, but he's the customer of the product that you're building, right? I think in general, people don't really know what they need until they see it. So he might not be giving you, because you keep saying, make the decision. Like, it's hard when he might want to say, I don't even know because I don't feel this is right, but he doesn't know how to say something about it because he's not even sure, when you're just not even sure until you see the right solution. And so maybe he's afraid to tell you, I don't, or and actually hasn't figured out what is it that's missing? Why am I not, you know what I mean? Why am I not reacting?
What's missing, what's wrong.
Yeah. So
it takes someone else to observe and for you to then throw in some suggestions and insights. And then once they get it, they're like, oh, that's so much helpful.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like what I would do is maybe say, are you not responding because you're thinking this? Are you not responding because, and just take some extreme guesses so that it gives him an easier chance to react and give you want a response. You want some kind of response, the decision, right? You want a reaction is what you're looking for. So if you want a reaction, if you give an extreme of, do you think this is great or do you think it's crap? I'm not saying you have to say that, but like you need somewhere to, you know what I mean? Put the skepticism in so he can correct it somewhere. He might say, it's actually neither of those things. You know what I've got going on? I've got X, Y, Z. I don't know. Because you want a reaction from him. And I think the more he probably feels pressure to give a decision, if he's not giving it, it's like there's a reason and you need to figure out what that reason is. Can
I give Jay maybe a flip side advice, which is the flip side advice is to starve him. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think of starving my support, my help, but do it in 3 steps as opposed to in 1 step. It's not on or off, but do it in 3 steps, meaning like if I dial down what I'm doing to support, right? And I think of doing this in a ramp of stepping it down over 3 steps. So it's not just 0, it's not 100 to 0, right? So I might drop it by 25%. Sometimes by starving the person I'm supporting, and you see nothing changes, which suggests that what I did didn't matter. Mm-hmm. Then I might step it down one more notch and get to either 50% or even just like, a third of the support left. And if you see no complaints, no response, it's actually saying maybe what I was doing wasn't as valuable as I thought it was. And so, or the flip side is they realize, oh my God, what you're doing is so valuable, right? Please, I need this back. And why'd you stop doing it? And so there's the flip side argument, you can start to dial down. It's important to dial as opposed to flipping a switch because you can then read what's happening and adjust accordingly.
This is such a different one, so I'm going to throw this out there. I'm just looking through. Is it Shayla from BBVA about your daughter? Do you want to share more? Just to switch gears a little.
Yes, my name is Shayla. Thanks for taking my question. I was informed end of last month, which is Friday of the last month, that she wants to get married to the man who met 3 months ago, and she was just dating him. And of course, he asked me, I think came over and asked me in 30 minutes, gave me 30-minute window after my work. And he said he wants to get married to her. I need an approval. I did say yes, but I barely met the man. I don't know anything about him. Now, she started looking for engagement rings and all that stuff. And she already said, she didn't tell me, my other daughter told me that they want to get married in November 14th, which she didn't tell me anything about it. And she's been avoiding me. I mean, since the time she came back from the long weekend, she literally avoids me, that I'm trying to talk to her, about the wedding, what she's planning and all that stuff. And she just doesn't open up. She literally avoids me all the time.
My first thought on it is I wrote like kind of before, meaning before that call you had. I don't know what your interaction has been with your daughter or even with this guy, meaning like
she barely met him, right?
But skepticism to like certain, I don't know what the background of this guy is, but like there's usually something, it's what we
Some
call
red
baggage.
flag or, yeah.
There's baggage from the past that's seeping into this, where there's assumption she's clearly making probably on your, my thinking would be negative as opposed to positive view of either the marriage or of him. And I don't know what that is.
And the timing of it too. It's like, oh, it's a lot, right?
Yeah. Like you
Because,
might have, yeah.
I have invited him on the 7th to come and spend time. I mean, like just me and, you know, the couple come and have spent time with me because I wanted to, you know, over dinner. And then obviously she whispered and said that she's looking for engagement rings. I mean, she didn't like, generally, she's very verbal. I mean, she opens up to everything and she expresses everything. But something when it comes to him, she doesn't express anything. She doesn't question or doesn't ask or doesn't say, hey, mom, I want to tell you something, or I wanted to share this, or this is the rings I'm looking for. What do you think about our wedding date? Or, you know, this communication. I mean, we never, I mean, you can text whatever she wants to text, she will text, and we have a free communication. I'm always available.
I mean, Sheila, one of the things it's making me think of, we taught a class a few weeks back about how to give critical feedback, and how to basically have difficult conversations. And I think obviously this is one of them for her, for whatever reason, to the point Charlie just made around baggage. For whatever reason, there's something there that she doesn't want to talk about. But I think this notion of not the eye-to-eye contact, not saying, let's sit down, let's talk about it. I think, you know, like I found a few weeks ago, we're in the ocean with my son, is when he finally said to me, I'm nervous about school and I'm afraid I'm not going to make any friends. I'm like, what? Right? But he wasn't looking at me. He was like, clearly what we call like the shoulder to shoulder. It's really hard to have difficult conversations eye to eye. Let's sit down, let's talk. It comes out in the oddest of times, but you can set that up, right? Like doing some kind of activity, whether even if it's in the car while driving, if it's, you know, sitting on the couch at night watching a movie, just pausing for a second, don't look at her, like just to start warming up that conversation, because she's obviously not, so it's like to set up the environment that the odds of her bringing it up are higher, as opposed to feeling like you need to have this direct conversation with her.
Can I take the flip side of it? I look at it is,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we've never met Shayla, but
Yeah.
I mean, what you gave her approval, but you know, in the business side, we call this silent protests.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people we talk to kind of say, okay, I agree, I'll do that. But then they begin the silent protest. I mean, the energy, the feeling I get from the way you are is you don't approve of this. Whether it's the individual, whether it's the timing, whether it's just even getting married right now, like there are many reasons. And I feel that, so the thought I have is this, we call this burn off. It's dangerous to burn your emotions off to the wrong person. Because for example, if you burn off to your other daughter, chances are she will go and tell everything to your daughter that is not speaking to you. You don't want that. But to find someone you trust, and sometimes you need to just burn off the emotions. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is happening. I can't believe she's being crazy. You just need to burn it off to a real human being. Because there's a level of holding back your negative upsetness, disapproval. So when you actually say, hey, I'd like you to come for dinner, it doesn't sound like I'm really excited to meet you, get to know you better, come to dinner. It's like an inquisition. I need you to come to dinner so I can ask my, you know, trick questions, the gotcha questions, and find a way to uncover maybe this is a bad idea. Like, I mean, that's what I would be thinking, just based on even the little bit of tone and word choice and stuff you have. And so, of course, when you're getting married in this environment, generally speaking, most people might think you're crazy, right? Why don't you wait till it calms down? Why don't you wait? You know, and they're accelerating the date. And when you say I'm marrying someone I met 3 months ago in this environment and we're getting married November 14th, I think generally speaking, disapproval from a parent is kind of like the norm, right? So it's going to be hard to kind of win them over to make them believe that you might be open-minded, that maybe this isn't all that bad. Maybe there are some good reasons to do this. Because right now in my head, I mean, granted, my daughter's almost 7, can't imagine her getting married now, but like this idea that I think if I had an older child trying to get married now, like I would struggle to come up with a good reason, even trying to be open-minded and creative. Why now, right? Every being of me would make them want to wait. So I feel like you need to find a space with another human being, a close friend, to like be able to burn off those thoughts, because once you kind of give that negative emotion space, you actually might start to say, okay, are there any reasons why someone in their sane mind, right, would actually benefit and want to go through this now, right? And that is something that might be something you need to get to be open-minded enough, and the person on the other side generally can feel when they feel someone who's open-minded or someone who's already decided.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you approved technically, but I don't sense approval, right? So I don't sense any interaction and desire to talk to my daughter or get to know the fiance is an act of kindness, curiosity, a true desire to help make this wedding special, but more of a
Disapproval.
yeah, there's like baked in disapproval in there. And I feel like this idea, we always need to deal with the terrible stuff ourselves with someone before we can truly come open-minded.
Yes.
Like as close as you can get to 50-50. The bad reasons will still stay, but there have to be some good. And it's like an exercise you can't do until you give the space for the bad to process. I don't know if that makes sense, Cheryl.
Yes, it does. The only thing, well, of course, everybody suggested, like did talk to my dearest friend yesterday, and she's gonna have a talk again today about this. Me being Indian, we think differently about weddings versus, American weddings, how kids react and how families are involved in Eastern cultures versus, I don't know about American culture, but I don't know, that's the way I'm thinking. But I did make time, set a time on Sunday morning with the breakfast. My only thing is, how do I approach this with her? Where do I start?
And I guess what I'm saying is you need a really healthy pouring gasoline on the negative thoughts in your head before you have, it's like the meeting before the meeting kind of thing. Before you have a meeting with your daughter or the fiance, you need someone you trust, a real human being that is not going to, again, parlay or relay all the information to your daughter, but where you can literally pour on the gasoline of all your negative thoughts on this situation. I sense you're like trying to sound positive when you have a lot of negativity you need to unload.
I think Chris Pelfrey, you have a question I think could be interesting for the next one. I don't know if do you want to unmute yourself? I can't see what company you're from, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm an educational consultant. In the Cleveland area, we support about 46 different school districts, including Cleveland Metro. And now that we are working remotely, we have a team of consultants that I work with, and we coach leaders at all levels, essentially. But what we're finding difficult with this really volatile environment is how to stay out in front and be responsive to their needs, because every day it's a new situation that they're encountering, and we want to make sure that we support them. And then to kind of add into that, once we do start supporting them in those, those areas that they deem and, to be the priority areas, then keeping them in that lane, because then they want to bounce out of that lane into another lane and start working on something else. So it's kind of, two-pronged, if you will, staying out in front, and then once we get them on the right track, then keeping them in that lane.
So can I give you my first reactions? I always think about, a lot of people want to add value, and what they don't really realize is in big ways. Most people don't want to add value in little ways, right? Because if you want to cut expenses, you want to cut big expenses, not small expenses. If you want to consult and add value to this group, you want to go big. And so I think the opposite first. If I can win them over in the small ways, I will find they will open up to me. Like oftentimes providing support is easiest if the other person truly was honest with me, right? As in really honest, as in open up like, oh my God, let me just tell you what's really going through my head every single day, every minute. And if they did that, it's easier to help someone. But usually they're guarded, they hold back. But you open up to someone who shows like this incremental piece of value. And usually the smaller it is, it's kind of a unexpected surprise in a good way, right? And so to be able to help someone in a small way, the first thing I have to be able to do is really have strong observation skills, right? Like, meaning like there's a notion usually in my head of what someone's going through. it's different when I actually sit in and observe. So it might be just, do you mind if I just join that call and just observe? Do you mind if and this idea that as you observe,
Yeah.
try to hold back from attacking the big things you think they need right away. And just take a notepad, have a list of the big things, but look for the tiny little things they might need help with. They might need a little help on scheduling, on, they might, I don't know, it's like smaller the better, because that's usually a signal of someone who's trying to be helpful. Like, because you don't get a lot of pats in the back and credit for doing small things. You get pats in the back for doing big things. So a consultant usually wants to shoot big, but if you shoot small, it's like this laddering process. They will then open up to you more because they see that, wow, you're really looking out for me and trying to help me. And the example they'll use is this small thing you did. Then they open up more, you can help more, and before you know it, you'll be tackling and helping in everything.
Chris, so it was week 5 of this whole co-op program that we built, this work from home protocol, our LIP class, if you get a chance. We talked a lot about, this is my thinking when I saw your question, how to get what Charlie's suggesting. We have this program we call it On My Mind. It is one of the most effective tools we've built, especially during work from home, this whole situation we're in, where all of our leaders provide twice a week. They're sending us an email of what's on their mind. And that's more prescriptive than that. They actually have to pick 3 emotions and then explain it. And the point is, usually we get updates as leaders on the tactical, like what they're working on, what they need to get done. It's like very tactical, like sort of summary information, which we have daily summaries and all that, but putting those aside, you want to know more than that, right? You want to know what's on their mind, like what emotions are driving certain decisions. Are they feeling down? Are they feeling excited? Do they feel nervous? Like whatever that is. And it's something that we do twice a week. And during work from home, we're now doing it 3 times a week because we're finding it that important. The signal that we're getting as leaders, and we're not reactive to somebody might say, oh my gosh, my fitness routine is completely dropped off, or I've gained weight during COVID, I need to figure that out, or we're not reacting to everybody's email saying, oh, let me go solve that, but we're looking for trends and patterns and themes, and then looking for the ways that we can add, the rigor and discipline, the things that they'll need on a more consistent basis. So I don't know if that helps at all, but I think just this notion of providing another way for them to communicate, to you that's not tactical, so that you can get more of that information. Now, obviously, the more truthful it is, the more helpful it's going to be, and that takes time for people to, to open up. So, I don't know if that helps, but we taught a whole class on this. If it helps, in week 5, so it'd be LIP number 5.
I thought Stefan's was interesting.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Stefan, is it Gessler?
Gessler,
I might be
at HP.
butchering your name here.
Nope, that is correct. So, my question is, how do you maintain the team positivity through all these incredible, uncertain times, and you never know what different people are sort of going through in their personal lives. What are some, ways or ideas to make that, positivity?
So I'm going to share my screen because this is a concept that few understand, that we wanted to go into more depth at some point.
And just to get a sense while he's pulling this up, Stefan, how big is the team that you're managing, or you're at HP, I guess?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So we have 14 people.
Okay.
So what I'm drawing here is what we call the swamp, right? And the most common thing people try to do, right, is you try to make a bridge that goes over, right? I'm just not going to draw the bridge right, but like a bridge that just doesn't go into the swamp. The other common thing people do is they give it a little time, this is really ugly stuff, and they eject. And the hard thing to understand, that all the good things you want and need, you have to go through the swamp, hit rock bottom, right? And once again, rock bottom, you'll know because there's just no more. There's no more tears, there's no more anger before you go out, meaning like people and teams need the space to be depressed, to honor the emotions of the worries and depression. One of the exercises that sometimes we will do when people are really depressed is we will brainstorm a list of what sucks. I want to go around the room and just make a list as long as it has to be together of what sucks. You can take a whiteboard like this or
We
a shared spreadsheet.
we usually say what's not working, but in COVID times, you just say what sucks, right? And just get to the point.
And then after you do that exercise, you can take a break and then we can do a second exercise of what sucks less. It's that bad that like, you know, like, and it's kind of like, that's my way to show a little bit of positivity, right? Which is like, I'm going to first let you as a team come together, commiserate around what sucks, right? It's open space and the list can be as long as you can make it. Then you go into like what sucks less. Yeah. Well, you know what sucks less is at least I'm not sick right now. What sucks less is at least like, you know, I'm in my house. Like I like this, and you might start small and then you got to get people to ramp up, but you'll find until you give them first the space to go and do this other side won't show up. And I think one of the classic mistakes leaders make is that they try to skip the bad part.
Yes, let's just be positive. We
right?
should be positive.
And
right?
you know, the idea of if you skip this, the number one thing that shows up, your positivity will be fragile. And you can tell it's fragile because all you have to do is poke a little hole in it and it just blows up.
One little piece of bad news. And
Yes.
yeah.
There we go again. I knew it. Everything's, and so it's fragile. It's not genuine. It's something that just people struggle with, which is, you know, we've done a lot of work with, you know, Susan Cain, we did a lot of work with her. She's the introvert expert, the power of quiet, and she's making this next book all tied to joy and sorrow. That to be human is to have both. I think we shared before, even this on my mind, over the time when we looked at the metrics and data, even over a course of 90 days, it is human to have close to 50-50 both positive and negative emotions go through us. So even in this terrible time, right, there's enough good in there, but we can walk away with the perception that it's all bad. And oftentimes the pathway to find that good is to actually take what everyone has suppressed, put in their subconscious, and actually has convinced everybody else, including maybe yourself, that negative is bad, let's not feed it. And the exact thing sometimes to do is, as a team, feed the negative emotion. An exercise of writing down how bad it is and just brainstorm as long a list. And once you fed that, you can start to see this other side. And it's powerful to do this exercise as a team because then you don't feel like I'm the solo negative Nelly of the group or, you know, like because I think it's amazing how as grown-ups now, we feel the need to be positive, right? We literally feel the need to contribute positive thoughts, positive thinking. We feel the need to almost within milliseconds course correct anyone's negativity, right? You have a frown, I'm gonna flip it upside down and make it a smile. And it's to be honest, it's annoying.
It is.
It's annoying because it's saying.
It's denying the real emotion that you feel, right?
And it's saying that
it makes it worse.
like my negative emotion is dirty, it's wrong.
Right, I shouldn't.
It's not, it is what it is. Right. And so you need to give it the space. And so it's counterintuitive to most leaders. If you see people struggling, rather than try to cheer them up, help them set up a meeting time or space to go really negative. And I know it feels scary because it might not recover. Human beings are so much more resilient than you can imagine. They are kind of never ending, like we call it the simmer of negativity, because it never, you never get to this green zone of the positive stuff because we're simmering on this negative.
It's that feeling, you know, when you just get people just get numb. They're just kind of numb out. It's like, it'd just be easier to numb out. That's why people do drugs and that's, you know, whatever. I mean, obviously that's not a good place to be when you're numbing out like that, but it's because they feel they can't go really bad. They're not positive, so they just kind of blah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. So one of our investors and board members, when his mother passed away, I mean, it was a lot of tears at the funeral. And he told me afterwards his strategy, right? Like of what he set up. He said he wanted to play the saddest music and set up things that literally were as sad as it can be. And I don't know if he even did this on purpose. While carrying the casket, he fell to his knees bawling. I mean, it was like everyone was bawling. And he said, but because he did that, the reception after the funeral, everyone was like, there was laughter and jokes and there was a buzz. And his point was because he deliberately accentuated and increased the amount of sadness and sorrow, the joy showed up at the reception. Most people hold back tears instead and hold back the negative. So when you go to the reception, it's also kind of,
You're on simmer still.
it's still
Yeah.
sort of negative. And it's counterintuitive to think that if you want to see the other side, you got to go really hard and aggressive on the side that you don't want.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm trying to look. Yeah, no, I'm looking for other situations. I'm just trying to go back and look.
Valerie's interesting.
Okay, Valerie from Boston. We love Boston. Go ahead if you're still here. Lack of fulfillment, not just at work but personal. Share more if you're here. Go ahead and unmute.
Maybe Valerie's
Let's
in
see, Valerie, are you still with us?
Does anyone have a pressing one that you want to unmute and just ask?
Yes, I do.
Sure.
Thank you. Because while you were explaining before, like what sucks, I part of put that before. What I'm gonna start with a negative. Like last year, I was downgraded where I'm working right now, not one level but two. So that for me sucked a lot, and not only in terms of my financial situation, but also my ego. And I'm very sensitive right now, and I don't care. So right now I'm struggling, like, should I be focusing on going out and find a new job, or should I just try to maintain calm and find a way to uh, to uh, to keep afloat where I am, particularly in times of COVID, right? Because overall, like I still have a job. I'm still getting paid every month, and I'm very grateful for that, regardless of what just happened. So I'm like really struggling into that, but I just don't feel I find joy in what I'm doing. So how can I find positivity after all that?
So can I tell you what, Monica? So totally appreciate how much you shared here with us. You know, the first I had was there's a close friend of ours. Her name is Beth Ann. It was interesting when she shared the story. So she was hired years ago to be CEO of this company, and she was told that, like, and you're going to be CEO of this group. It's a fairly large organization, but we're going to start you 6 months prior so you can kind of get to know everyone before you become CEO. Well, as they got close to that 6-month mark, they basically said, we're not going to give you the CEO role. I mean, she had like quit everything and like, I mean, kind of came in. Imagine doing the rounds, talking to everyone as the new to-be CEO. Imagine the ego hit, right?
Yeah.
And she actually shared with us, it's like one of those crossroads in your life, right? She wanted nothing more than to just say, F you, leave the place, right? And you'll see, like, you know, how much I was missed, or I don't know, you just want to leave. But instead she chose to stay. And she stayed, and she spent the time like almost getting curious of, like, you know, what like, it's almost like she spent time in this idea of bloom where you're planted notion, and went into depth. And it's amazing when she didn't have the pressure to be CEO, she rolled up her sleeves and just tried to do a pretty damn good job. And 6 months later, they actually made her CEO. Now, it doesn't always work out this way. But it's amazing where oftentimes when bad things happen, the hardest thing we struggle with is a reset, right? Like, it's not about the 2 levels up job, right? But it's about, like, kind of like, hey, there's a reason what happened. I don't know. Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the enterprise, but maybe it is you. Usually it's at least half and half, right? But this idea of, you know, there's a lot of people who don't have jobs right now, obviously, right? And so if someone said, you know what, I'm going to fire Monica and give you Monica's job, right? But that person now is Monica 2, and that's you. So you're coming in and you're thinking, Monica 1 was a schmuck that did not do a good job, and I'm coming in to replace with Monica 2, right? So what would you do, right? Because you can't go and do the same thing. What would you do to do whatever Monica 1's job is better? And there's a part where you got to the level you did. I am sure you can get there, and maybe even faster. But we struggle with this reset. And we struggle with this kind of, like, you know, there's a CEO that always said whenever they travel, when they're flying back from vacation or trip, they always believe they're flying in to replace the schmuck that's running the company.
Which is themselves.
Which is themselves, right? And so you're not coming in to do the same job, right, and play it safe, but you're coming in to disrupt and change what they were doing. Like, but you're coming in with this mindset that they were a schmuck. So if Monica 1 is a schmuck, right? Monica 2, which is you now, you're going to go in to go and do much better than a schmuck, right? And you're going to look for understanding an honest view of what they did well, but also a lot of what they did bad. And roll up your sleeves and just kind of reset and do that. And I know when it comes to ego, the hardest thing is you think everyone's watching you and laughing at you and mocking. That's the person who got demoted 2 levels. That's the person, right? They used to be good, but no longer good. You know what we find almost always? Everyone's so self-conscious and self-concerned. They're so selfish in many ways. No one's looking at you.
Yeah, they're not.
They're all worried about themselves, right? And they barely notice the things you notice about yourself. So everyone's so busy, and even more these days, looking at themselves and how much they're suck and whatnot. And the few bullies out there who try to pick on you to maybe, you know, just make themselves better, like, you know,
They got deeper issues.
yeah, they got deeper issues. Put them out of the picture. The view I have is literally go in, and the way I look at it. So you might not like this organization anymore. You might put your resume out there. I assume, like, if you are a sane person, you're going to probably not quit until you find the next
Absolutely.
job, right? Yes. So that might take 3 months. That might take 6 months, right? So you have nothing to lose as Monica 2 to go and just show up Monica 1 for 3 to 6 months minimum.
And leave on a
Send
high.
the resumes out, apply for other jobs, but like, it's going to still take time. Why not take that 3 to 6 months and at least do a hell of a lot better than Monica 1?
Yeah,
Right? Nothing to
no,
lose.
and I'm in a different role even. Like, part of the problem was not, I think, but I will go back and review what I can do better as the 1. It was not necessarily because of something that I did. The only thing I did was report my direct report. I was reporting to the CMO of the organization, and I report her for discriminatory actions. And even though they said I could not get, what's the word? There's a special word that you cannot be punished when you do that. All of a sudden, I got this demotion. So it's hard for me a little bit on that. But yeah, I will definitely try to do my best. But that's the struggle. Like, if I put my efforts finding the job, or my efforts like trying to do my best Monica 2 in this point.
Yeah, and the way I look at it, Monica, I mean, like, I don't know if your situation is kind of like what happened at Uber, right? Where, like, it talk about discrimination and all kinds of terrible acts, and, you know, the whistleblowers got demoted, and maybe it becomes that route, and maybe it's a legal suit. Who knows? You might do that, you might not. Or you might just say, this place ain't for me, right?
Yeah.
And you might leave, but I'm saying you still have
You have a
3 to
job.
6 months
Yeah.
before you will leave, even if you, at best case, get a job, right? And so maybe you pull that trigger on the side and see what happens to find a better place. But in the meantime, I think less about the role you have, but I think about the role you have now. Like, I mean, I'm a pretty competitive individual. I hate giving people the last laugh. Even if I leave, I want to leave having add such value. I think, God, we really lost a good one. As opposed to, you know what, we made the right choice to demote her and she just spiraled downward and got worse and worse. I want to leave winning. I want them to remember me winning. And so win in this role now, not the role that they already demoted you out of, because that's now annoying when they said, you're not having this role, but I keep trying to show you I can do that role. So this is the idea where, I mean, as a human being, it has to hit you. Demoted 2 levels financially, and then the ego and whatnot, and given like this, you're trying to report a discriminatory action, and yes, they can't retaliate, but they of course felt like they did. Like, it's just horrible stuff. Of course, it's affecting the performance of whatever you have now. So I think this idea of what I can do better is not the old Monica. That's Monica 0. Monica 1 is what you want to do better than. And if you start ramping up and trending, doing better job there, and while maybe putting your resume out, like, you might at that point choose to stay, or you might choose to go when that option shows up. But in the meantime, like, just do better than the schmucky Monica 1 right now.
Yeah.
And if you want to file lawsuits and go that route, you can pursue that on the side too. But these are like tough situations and decisions. What I do know is you have this job and you're going to do it for now. I want to win. I want to trend to win.
Thank you.
Well, we could take another one. I know we're coming up to our time, but if there's another, if I don't know,
Someone
do you
wants
want
to
do one
unmute,
more
then
if you
maybe-
wanted to unmute. Everybody's like, I don't know if I want to. No, don't be shy. See. Anything else? Anybody have a burning one they want to get off their chest before we go? It's like rocking her baby. It's like unbelievable. It's amazing. Okay. Okay. Well, we have a forum we can add. We're starting to build into COAD that we can continue some of these conversations, and we'll try to. It's hard to react to every single one while we're in the situation, but we'll try to answer as many as we can even after this. If you have other things you can add to it, you could ask now. Otherwise, I think we'll do feedback. Let's see if there's a new message. Sorry. Thank you, Carla. And
It's hard stuff,
Stefan, and it is hard
right?
stuff.
I think it's hard stuff. I think the thing that we try to do is oftentimes through the coaching work that we will do, and once again, we don't charge for this. We always do this for free because I think that's just the best way to help people. But it's just like a counterintuitive path and option that you might not have seen. Because we always say, if what you're doing works, just keep doing it, right? Which is why the situational workshops tends to be situations where I've been trying stuff, almost hitting a brick wall and like saying like, is there a way through this brick wall or not? And sometimes there is, and sometimes there are other paths that just are not in your sight. And oftentimes they're the most counterintuitive ones. And
It's a blind spot. Well, a lot of it's a blind spot. It's a blind spot for a reason. You can't see it. When it's a blind spot, you actually can't see it. So we all need help seeing blind spots. Yeah, thank you for everybody who was very vulnerable to share. That was awesome. It's not easy. We do this situational workshop. We do these in our own company every month. Everybody's split into groups. And there's usually 2 coaches and 4 mentees, and we just rapid fire go through personal situations, business situations, and it's healthy. And everybody who's not sharing gets a chance to hear, when it's not their turn. But we always like to think we're so unique, but we're all so similar. We all have such similar challenges. And so it's really helpful to hear other people's situations. So thank you guys for sharing.
Yeah, Monica, you're going to have to keep us informed on how you start to put on armor. And I always think one of the first things to do is start to put in even a aggressive exercise routine in place. We found certain exercises drive different things. Yoga, Pilates drive a level of calm when you're too jittery. Versus if you high intensity HIIT workouts get you ready to fight.
Yeah.
So if I had a guess, like you need to kind of find fight, where Shayla from the wedding said, you might need the yoga and Pilates as you burn off emotions to find that other side of curiosity for your daughter, for this decision, for, and keep us informed. We want to see you obviously kill it and succeed in both, whether it's a relationship with a daughter or, is it Monica too, whether you stay in this company or you move to the next one, right? People always say when you look back in 5-year increments in your life, most downs are a blip that like, you almost, it's interesting, you look back at these rock bottom moments and usually most people identify them as the turning points in their life.
Yeah, Beth Ann called it her defining moment.
Right.
It's like a defining moment in your life when you hit that. And that's the juncture where you can go one way or you can obviously go the other way. It's so hard, but those are the defining.
And most people pick what feels like the safer, more sane path, which is to hit eject. The defining moment is when you stay and fight and you win. It changes you forever. Yeah. And it's the lesson you share. It's the story you tell.
It's like the rising from the ashes. What's the thing? Phoenix. The phoenix rising from the ashes.
So it's not easy, which is why put in the HIIT workouts and whatnot.
I was going to say, as a company after 9/11, it went down from a few hundred employees down to 4 of us, and it's like 24 or whatever. I was like 22, whatever. We felt like we were kids. Phoenix, right? But I will tell you that like what's that? The Phoenix.
Stefan put Phoenix.
Oh yeah, I like Stefan's Phoenix thing. That's cool. Phoenix Rising. But it's one of the things that was the most healthy thing we ever did is we would exercise together, and it bonded us. And it gave us the extra we needed of sharp thinking time after exercise, because you get blood flowing, you get a little break from the work, but then to get back to it, it's hard to do though when you've been, knocked down, you're scared. Yeah, your ego. I mean, all these other companies, .com,
Yeah.
blow
I
up.
mean-
All these other companies succeeding, and then you feel like you go down. It's like the worst feeling ever. Like, is everybody else succeeding and not me? And
Yeah, I mean, we went through the worst of the worst. It was like 150 people down to 4 people. We had eviction notices, 6 of them, 9 months of unpaid rent. Every day I woke up for 60 days with a bloody nose, just the way stress manifested. And we fought our way out of it. And it's amazing where when you do, you kind of feel like, people always say like Megan was one of the 4. Like Megan is like a child bathed in scalding water, just seems to have no fear. And it's
Which is
something
not
that
really true.
it's
It
not
always-
fully
it's
true.
not
She's
true.
very jittery, but like,
you know,
but,
hey,
but the point being, like,
hey,
but the point
it's all
being,
relative. It's all right.
you look back and you're like, I've been through worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's amazing how to put one foot in front of the other. And, you know, this mentor of mine always said, get your oars in the water.
Mhm.
When you're feeling like times like this, the worst thing people do is just sit still.
Yeah.
And they're paralyzed. Get your oars in the water, row in one direction. It doesn't even matter what direction, just row like hell. And if you're rowing towards the waterfall and going to fall over, you'll turn the boat and row like hell the other way, but just row.
Just move.
And
Yeah.
that act of learning to move and row and get
Mhm.
yourself not only physically doing that, but then mentally doing that,
Mhm.
like, it's amazing how, I mean, it's always a relative race. Everyone's sitting still.
Yeah.
If you row like hell and you start to row like hell and then play smarter too, like, it's a different path than what you may have thought, but you'll get to the right place. And it's not just cheesy positive talk. It's just, it takes that much
But
hard work to
everybody
get there.
underestimates the rigor. We keep talking about rigor and discipline that's required to do that sustainably.
Mm.
It's like, you know, some people will try that and they do it for a week and they're like, that was awesome, but then they give up because it's either too much, too fast. It's not sustainable, which is why you have to figure out the rituals that you're going to put into your weekly. I love when the military calls it the battle rhythm. I love that because it is a battle. Every week is a battle. Like, you might not be in an actual war, but it's a battle every week if you want to succeed. So figuring out that, like, the bottom, we call it PEMS, right? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, we all need. The physical at the bottom it is actually, out of all of it, the easiest thing to change. The body is easier to change than anything else. Our mind, we are so complex. And so to change but if you change the body, you can change the mind, and it's so connected, mind, body, and how good the exercise can be for you, even if it's 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. Like, even just getting that discipline, you start feeling better about yourself, you start feeling healthier, you start getting that oscillation in your brain.
And the ideal we say-
Ideally, you do it with somebody else, even over Zoom. It's like, just like,
Because you need that gym buddy, that accountability. And this is where ideally, if you can, schedule, if you really want to go bare minimum, just go Mondays.
Yeah.
But and the reason why Mondays, it gives you a boost for the rest of the week.
Mhm.
You can be productive through the week. If not, if you can do sort of the better norm, a Monday and a Wednesday, right? Create a recurring appointment with someone to literally do that exercise. 30 minutes, probably just, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes,
Even
just
20
small.
minutes.
But like, it's amazing, just literally calendarize and schedule it for 3 times. 3 Mondays in a row, 3 Wednesdays in a row.
Mhm.
The times we found most effective is either 9:30 or 6:30, depending on which side you like.
And there is a
Right?
ton of videos on COA and our video hub. It's like 2,000 videos. There's every kind of workout you could possibly just put one on and just, you know, it's like you have to almost set that up in advance. Like, pick something you like to get going, right? Because then if you pick something you hate, it's not going to happen. So pick something that you like to do more than something else, at least to start on Monday, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
and so Monica, like two great examples. If you look up Mike in boxing,
Yeah.
or you look up Janine, who's a bar instructor,
Mm.
they're both so high energy and so go. Literally find even one other person and literally just choose to just do those, even if it's one Monday, you know, just Monday, 3 weeks in a row. It'll start to get you different.
foundation.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I do yoga regularly. I do yoga at the beach, which is awesome. I
Wow.
suggest it for everyone. But yeah, maybe I just need something more to fight in a fighting mode rather than a
Yeah.
calming mode. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Bring out the fight. Bring
Yeah.
out the beast.
So Mike was like the Naval Academy boxing star. He was like #1. I mean, he's an animal. So like, and he was a Marine. So actually,
He was
Marines
a
are always a
Marine.
Marine. So
Yeah.
he's a Marine.
Once a Marine, always a Marine, yes.
But like, so it could be that. Janine, you know, is a professional dancer and whatnot, and is just nonstop go. You need something like that, like kind of aggressive go.
Mm.
And do it just do it 3 times. You'll see a difference. And I say schedule 3 because then if you don't like it, fine, stop. But don't stop after 1. You got to give it at least 3. All right, we'll take some feedback. We'd love any feedback you guys have. But thank you guys for taking the time with us.